Still here, still working on stuff. Just a little bit slower these days. Well, reason I haven't been around or posting any videos lately is I literally have not been doing anything in the garage. If you've seen some of my previous videos and even one of the last two from the racetrack, you probably have seen my best buddy Billy the Saint Bernard, with 2.5-year-old Saint Bernard, and just an unbelievable character, like such a special boy. Personality larger than life. Everybody should have been able to meet him. I mean, we took him to a lot of the races. He was not my dog. He was just my best friend. And his owners, God bless them, he never went without. And unfortunately, he has had some health problems from the very beginning. And a lot of it was under control. And recently, he kind of had a bout, a little bit of a flare-up with some different stuff. And as hard as he was fighting, it was too much for him to overcome. And God knows he fought like any human would be envious of how strong that boy was. But yeah, his owners, there was nothing left undone to try to help him. It just it couldn't be done. But that's what's been going on. So he was such an important part of all of our lives, and it's just a huge part. I mean, everything we did was planned around how we could include him. He was one of us, he was the fourth wheel, and we were his pack. And him being gone is a huge part missing of our everyday, especially the owners that have to live where Billy lived. But that's just kind of what's been going on, and why I haven't really cared to work on the motorcycle stuff lately. It's just been, but one of them stretches of life, but I have been trying to get out in the garage and get things sorted and keep my mind occupied, try to keep going without forgetting, not the bike stuff, without forgetting Bill. I'll never forget him, but I just need to keep my mind busy. So this is going to be the worst video intro I've ever done, hardest one I've ever done, longest one to get sorted out, to try to get across what's kind of been going on with us, me and my friends, and just in general lately, without trying to make it like it's not about me. It's Bill, and like I said, I wish everybody could have met Bill. If you want to see a little more about what a character he was, he did have his own Instagram, and it's just Billy the Saint Bernard. But if you want to see him, if you're a dog person, animal person, just go look at some of the pictures of the things we did with him, and one of a kind. There'll never be another one like that, but there should be a million more everywhere. But he was special. That was my buddy. But now I'll get on to the motorcycle stuff. So hopefully we never have to do another intro like that. So right now the bike is, I kind of cleaned her up a little bit. No motor in there obviously, but it's just been kind of sitting off to the side because all the motor stuff was all over there, and then there was some over here. Just, it was a mess of things. But as you can see, I have a motor going back together. And this peach here is a complete mutt of a motor. Everything in this motor is on its last opportunity of life of providing me any kind of enjoyment. So I'm going to get you guys dizzy spinning around here. So all of the stuff that was in that bike, as far as the cases go, the 3-piece cases, that's all under the bench over there right now. I'm holding on to it. It's been decked so many times that the deck is actually short. The pistons come out like 30 thou. I might, because they're still structurally good. What I might do is, at some point, this is down the road, I might try to do something with some, because you can get shorter stroker rods, like a 2mm shorter rod or something like that. I might try to do something with that, or maybe do some pistons with a different wrist pin location. But the cases are too good to toss. Project for a later day. So to replace those, I had This whole set of stuff, we'll get to that in a minute. But I didn't initially want to use all that just yet. That was going to be another project that's been sitting on this bench. These cases, so I have another set, a complete set, 3-piece of, a matching set of cases, and I got another crankshaft. 2 weekends ago, I drove 3 hours north of here to buy those things off of a buddy of mine that I raced with from Minnesota. He cut me a good deal on the stuff because I figured the way all of my stuff I had been using was just wore the F out. I'm like, I'm going to start with a fresh set of cases and crank. I was in a hurry when I picked the stuff up. He had the stuff just sitting in his garage. He never checked anything out. I didn't measure them until I got back to here. They're actually 05, 06 cases, so I got a little bit bigger bore. So that means nothing of what I had for pistons or whatever we're going to work in there. It's just, just stock bore stuff is all I use. So that put me in a predicament of either offloading those cases and keeping the crank, obviously. The crank's good. I measured that up. Crank's perfect, exactly what I need. But the cases, I was like, well, I could offload those and try to find another set of, 01 to 04 cases, the 73 millimeter bore stuff that I normally use. Or, because that stuff is all getting super hard to find nowadays, apparently, after looking, the 05, 06 is actually getting to be a little bit easier to find. So maybe this was just a sign that I need to hold on to that and build a motor over the winter with 05, 06 cases. They're just a little bit easier to get. I do not make enough power that I need to worry about just shattering in cases or wrecking. That the structural difference between the two is really going to matter to me. I can tell you I make 600 horse and it don't freaking matter when we go racing, and I can only use 350. So I'm not leaning on this stuff like a Pro Street guy. So I think those will be just fine for a future over the winter motor build. But that stuff will be next in line. That's actually another cylinder head in there. So I'm starting to get parts together. I'll do the 73.4 millimeter bore pistons. I'll get a new set of rods. I got a crank. I'll get a trans all dialed in with the big output shaft. So I got some work to do there. But like I said, over winter, that's the head I have been using. I want to replace that head. That was originally going to be that guy. I decided, F it. We're putting this motor back together with all the best of the used stuff that I have. When the motor from the race weekend came out of this thing and I realized it spun that number 4 rod bearing, and I say spun, it barely spun it. Like, you can still see in the rod that spun the bearing, you can still see the cross hatching from the hone mark, or from the hone on it, on 95% of the bore. It oblonged the bore by like 2 thou, just enough that I don't trust reusing the rods. So I have a set of Carrillo H-beams that I'll probably send out to get reconditioned, resized. The rod didn't even take any heat. The bearing was mostly intact yet, which is how the crank ended up still being good. Literally, there was no material, no nothing on the crank. I just polished her up a little bit. I mic'd it. It's still round. It's still to size. So that crank is back in that motor. That motor also has a set of used, when I used to have a nitrous motor, set of Crower rods. So I got another good set of rods in there that did not have a spun bearing, so they're actually true to size. I got all new bearings for that, for the bottom end. We're still using the same JE pistons that I've been using. They're all still in good shape. These have the stock, or I shouldn't say stock. These are still the JE replacement rings. We tried the Total Seal package on the other set of cases that are over there, and that experiment didn't go well. So these are the JE pistons with the the standard issue, which would have come with these ring pack, and then it's got my trans and everything in there that's been had gears swapped out of it for different reasons, and so the trans is kind of a mutt, but it's got a good output shaft. It's got the big billet output shaft in it, but it's never really fucked up on me. One time I did, I broke the old input shaft. That's what happened. Broke the collar off where the bearing sits on the far side. But other than that, all the gears and everything's been pretty reliable. So the thing with this motor, why I wasn't sure I was going to use these cases, and I've mentioned it in past videos that I was going to put a motor together with these cases as sort of a project experiment, and I wasn't going to tell you what it was until I was doing it. I'm doing what everybody says you cannot do with these cases. But as a machinist, you can measure things very accurately these days. And if you know what you're looking for, I think you can make work what I'm doing here. So what this is that bottom and middle are from my old nitrous days. I torched the cylinders out of a set of cylinders from the 0304 cases, and they've been since thrown away. I hopped on the eBays and I bought just a top half of cylinders off eBay for, I want to say it was like $150. They're like virgin, untouched, good condition. But for whatever reason, these guys on eBay want to separate these three pieces of the cases, and they think they're going to get more money that way. When they end up just really they end up just sitting on them because people think you can't buy just the top half because that's the top half of your crank bearing, and the bottom half of your crank bearing is in the middle case. So everybody's always looking for the complete matched three-piece set. So these guys on eBay sit on these things and they try to part them out. These cylinders were originally for sale for like $275. I kept bidding on them, but I really lowball the guy, and he finally came back at that low price, and I'm like, fuck it, for that much money, it'll be worth the experiment. So I'm literally running a mismatched set of cases at the crank bearing line. But I bolted all this stuff together, and I started mocking up the crank, measuring bearings, checking clearances, measuring bores. Suzuki must have very, very, very good quality control with their finished product. And I say that because when you go to buy bearings for these motors, what is there, 4 or 5 color combos that you can get, or color codes that you can get? And from the thinnest bearing to the thickest bearing is like a thou and a half difference. So they're holding tight tolerances when they make all this stuff. So I said, screw it, let's measure some things and see what we can do. And that's how this came to be. So this is a complete mutt motor of used parts. So we're going to see how far it goes. That's what that motor is for. If this fails, this is all going to go back together with a good set of matched cases, not brand new, but a virgin untouched crank. We'll just start fresh over the winter. The Busa motor thing that I want to do, I don't know that that's going to happen. I started putting pen to paper on prices for stuff. No bueno. That will be an expense I don't want to make right now. I'd be better off buying an entire Busa and building a new bike. So we're going to keep going this bike as a true 1000. I'll just keep nabbing up stuff on eBay and whatever I can get cases and cranks from. I actually found another crank locally that I'm going to go get, so I'll have 2 backups. I'll probably snatch another set of cases at some point, but I need to start buying transmission parts. I'm talking a million miles an hour now because I'm trying to get to the point of explaining what's going on with this, how this is going to be sort of a channel project. We'll see how this goes. If this makes it to winter, because there's 3 races coming up pretty quick. There's the MKE Real Street Takeover, there's JJ's Arm Drop, and then actually MKE, then there's an invite race the weekend after. I might have my dates mixed up, don't quote me on that. And then JJ's Arm Drop and Muncie. So there's 3 races coming up I want to make, plus I got to test. If this motor makes it till winter, I'm going to tear it all down, and I'll show you guys the inside, how bearings and everything look if it lived. And if that's the case, if it lived, I'll put bearings back in it and put it back together. There's a good spare motor to what will be the primary motor eventually. Now, on to what I think has been my goofy oil problem I had since I put this motor back together over winter. Well, I say this motor, but it would actually be that motor that's buried now. Since I put a motor together last winter, I've had oil problems, oil pressure issues, just weird, like what the hell is going on with this thing? And I had changed out cams over the winter. Those, again, they came out of a grudge bike out of the south that had a big, bad cylinder head. And I'm going to just air quote everything right now. But it was a bike that was won in a raffle that a buddy of mine won, and he parted it out. The bike didn't run. He parted it out. Well, they ported the cylinder head so poorly that they actually ground away the majority of the intake valve seats. So I have another 07, 08 cylinder head sitting down there that needs valve seats if anybody wants to do that. But yeah, the motor had never run, and it had some decent cams in it though, and a decent set of rods. So I ended up with the rods and the cams and the head, and I put those cams finally in that motor over there this winter. They're Webbs, they're nice. But what I didn't notice until cleaning all of my stuff. I just got this cylinder head going back together. I relapped the valves, checked the valve job on it, make sure nothing's bent or going on goofy in the head. And actually, everything looks pretty good. This head might, live to see a few more battles. But what had happened, see, the way my cams are set up is, there's these plugs in the end of the camshaft, see? And that one's got a little tack weld on it to hold it in. Yeah, it would have been awesome if those were tack welded in from the start. I will show you a picture here. But what actually happened was that intake cam, the whole time I've been running it in this cylinder head since winter, so 2 times that motor's been apart with goofy oil issues. Well, one was the rings, but 2 other times it's been together, it had oil pressure issues. Something weird going on. The plug was missing out of the end of the intake cam on the sprocket side. So oil was coming up, pressurizing through here, and it was just piddling back down. So I just basically had a huge internal oil pressure leak. And that's the story I'm sticking to. So I have some stock cams down here that I popped the plug. They're just like freeze plugs. Popped the freeze plug out of a stock cam, popped it into my intake webcam, and then today I took and tack welded all them plugs into the end of the cams so they cannot blow out. The reason I think that plug has been missing since this thing was in that big bad Southern Grudge motor is because I never found the plug in the motor. That would have been, it's a good sized little freeze plug. Would have been in the oil pan. I mean, it would have run through the ignition pickup. Everything on this side of the motor would have went down into here. It would have been sitting somewhere, and I never found the plug. I believe that answers the question of why I've had oil pressure issues since I put those cams in the winter. That motor's been apart 2 different times. I never looked at the end of that camshaft, and I'm an idiot for not doing that. Normally, I go to the solvent tank and you're blowing into the oil holes and whatever, and that's how I found it this time. The solvent was all running out the end of the camshaft, and I looked. I'm like, there's no plug. This cam was never pressurizing to feed any of the journals. I got lucky. The motor only had 3 passes on it before it came apart for the final time. That I got lucky it didn't wipe them journals out on the head. Like, that was actually, like, they're all decent. You actually see it must have been starting to starve for oil because there's those swirl marks on the buckets. I might actually replace them or repolish them out. Something. I don't know. We'll see. Not super worried. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing. I didn't start even tearing into putting this motor back together until like a little over a week ago is when I finally came back out in the garage and decided I need to get back to doing something. So the plan going forward is we're going to see how long we can make this guy live. I'm going to reset valve lash, and then I'm going to have to put everything back on the motor. We're going to just do the same routine. I'm going to go with the whatever thickness head gasket I think I need to get the piston valve clearance that I need, because I have a variety of head gaskets. So we'll just figure out what I need to get me in tolerance of where I want to be. So I got a little bit of time going there, but going into the coming week, I'm going to get that head done, get it on here, and by next weekend, I want this thing running, and I want it to have good oil pressure, even at idle. None of this like 5 pounds at idle bullshit. that was not great to see. As far as the rest of the bike, I'm going to say 20 more times. I don't think anything else going on with it. We're pretty much we're good for now. I'd like to do some stuff over winter, but it's July. We're not worried about that right now. We need to get a motor together for that upcoming end of the season rush to enjoy this thing and hit some races. So that's the plan going forward. Thanks for sticking around, and again, apologize for the huge break in between videos or not getting back to I get a lot of text messages on questions for stuff and comments on the videos that I haven't got a chance to get back to yet. I just haven't been doing a lot of anything really, kind of just hanging out, walking around. Hopefully you can forgive me for the not very upbeat intro to this video, but I just wanted to let you know what's been going on, where I've been, and kind of give a little shout out to my buddy. So thanks for watching. Hopefully we'll have this motor running in a week or so. Get back to filming some tech and motorcycle things, fun stuff. So we'll see you in the next video. Thanks again.